Okay, so we've made a localized mask, and that was in the previous video, which will be linked down below. And this is also taking you through how I processed some real data from the paper that is also linked below. So we've created our localized mask, which is shown in blue, and I'm going to run a localized refinement on that. And the first thing I want to do is find the center of my mask. So what I'm going to do is open up the command line, which is already open down below, and I'm going to type out the command measure center and then my model number, and then this mask is model number 2, and I will be given a set of X, Y, and Z coordinates respectively that represent the center in pixels of these of my mask. So I've got 153.77, which is my X coordinate, 135.57, which is my Y coordinate, and 156.22, which is my Z coordinate, and disappeared after some time. So I need to convert that measurement back into angstroms, and to do that I need to divide by my pixel size, which in this case is 0.932 angstroms per pixel. So I have 153.77, 135.57, and 156.22, and that corresponds to X, Y, and Z respectively. So I'm going to divide that by 0.932 and drag that down to get 164.98, 145.46, and 167.61. Okay, so I'm going to use that as my offset coordinates for localized refinement. And if we move over to cryoSPARC, I've already run this, but to show you what I've done so far, I have imported my volumes as shown in the previous videos, and I've created my mask as shown in the previous video that was linked at the beginning. And what I've done is run particle subtraction. And remember, this is a 6 subunit. This is a protein called NSP15, which is 6 identical subunits, and I've subtracted the 5 subunits that weren't selected out of this protein. And just to take you through that process, I went to the utilities section, and then local refinement section, my mistake, and did particle subtraction. And the input for that job are my particles linked from symmetry expansion, the volume from the input of the symmetry expansion, which was this job 1092, and then the mask that represents the 5 subunits I want to subtract out. And in this case, it would be the 5 subunits, the 5 subunit mask from before, and you can see the missing subunit here. Okay, so I would go through that, particles, link in the volume, and of course my mask of my 5 subunits. And you can select to do a small subset of your data, which in this case I have 2 million particles almost, and I don't think I need that much. So what I did was only use half of that, so 1 million particles. And that should do it, and I ran that. I'm not going to run it again because I've already done it here in job 1100. And next I'll take you through the setup for local refinement. So I'm going to come down to local refinement here. Oh, my mistake. localized refinement. I'm going to give it the input particles from particle subtraction. And I'm going to give it the reference volume that I used to create my mask. So that would be my imported volume here. And of course my mask that was generated from that reference volume of the single subunit. Okay, now here below is where we're going to actually define our offsets. So we're going to use a fulcrum point, and I will have a tutorial that explains the fulcrum point listed below. It's not my tutorial, it's a cryoSPARC tutorial, and those are always very good. Of the yeast, I forget the protein name, but it tracks the motion of an arm. And we're not going to do the exact same thing that they did. We're actually not setting a fulcrum point and searching through 3D variability. We're just kind of doing a focused refinement on our one subunit. But our X, Y, and Z coordinates that were generated from our measure center command and then divided by the pixel size are going to go in here as whole numbers. So we had 164.98. I'm going to round that to 165. 145.46. I'm just going to round that to 145. And then my Z coordinate was 167.61, and I will round that up to 168. And then because I'm doing focused refinement, I'm not actually going to allow much variability in my search. So I'm going to change the local shift search to 1 and the local rotation search to 1 and the alignment resolution to 0.1. And those are all the minimum values achievable. You can always turn on non-uniform refinement as well, and you can define a number of extra final passes, and I usually don't do that. So with all of that filled out, the default settings are usually okay. One other thing that you can do if you've already set the mask size that you want is reduce the dynamic masking, and I usually like to set those values both to 1 so that the original mask that I set, which was a 5 angstrom hard mask with a 3 angstrom soft mask outside of that, is not changed. And with that we can run, and I've already run that, and the result is up here, and you can see an increase in the resolution from 2.96 for the full protein down to 2.67 for the single subunit. And I can download and show you that result. One of the things that you have to keep in mind is through particle subtraction you're going to introduce a lot of dust, and you'll see that in the structure as it opens up here in a second. And we need to use the hide dust command in Chimera to remove any noise. So the first thing we're going to do is actually just get rid of the previous data, and I'll drop my step down to 1. And like I said, you can see a ton of dust here. So we're going to go to Tools, Hide Dust, and then select Hide. And usually this defaults to 100, but I dropped it down to around 10 usually to get a good result. So my entire subunit is not hidden. Okay, and then here is our final result, and you can see pretty clearly some good definition in the protein, and that is how you do a localized refinement, at least for NSP15, without any search and conformational change.